Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! This happened a while ago, my memory isn't the best, so this is only a basic outline of what was actually said. Okay, let's start. For background, I went to school with the entitled kid a very long time ago, and somehow I managed to get on his bad side. He didn't seem to like me and would use any possible excuse he had to torment me and make school a living hell. Before we started sitting together in this particular class, he had already been picking on me for years, so I wasn't excited and kinda expected this from him. The entitled kid wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, and he often copied other kids' answers. I didn't want to make his attitude towards me any worse than it already was, so I would just play along and act like I didn't notice him looking over my shoulder. This went on for a while until one day, the teacher finally held us both back after class. This is basically how the conversation went. Teacher says, "I have noticed both of you are getting similar scores on tests and are writing down the same answers in class. Would either of you like to admit to anything?" As I didn't want to be called a snitch, I kept my mouth shut and hoped this other kid would learn his lesson, but no, that's not how it works apparently. The entitled kid says, "She has been stealing my answers for months. It's so annoying." I say, "Actually, it's the other way around." Teacher asks, "Why didn't you say this before?" "She's just trying to blame it on me." "She's just trying to blame it on me." It basically ended up with me in detention and the kid running free because the way it looked was as if he told the truth and I turned the tables on him. We were still sitting next to each other in class, so he continued to copy my work. Then it came to the next test. I had heard something online about someone who got their revenge by taking all the answers wrong in pencil, then rubbing it out at the last minute and rewriting them in pen. And that is exactly what I did. I ticked every answer far from correct, to an extent where some of the answers were even quite dumb. Then around 5 minutes to the end of the test, I went through again, rubbing out my answers and ticking the correct answers in pen, also intentionally covering most of the answers so that he struggled to copy them. The kid's expression was a mixture of anger and defeat, as he knew he couldn't do anything now. It was priceless. After the test, he came up to me looking pale and worried, and asked me why I did it. I acted like I had no idea what he was talking about, and he stormed off angrily. We handed in the tests, and when they came back, I got a decent score as usual and he failed miserably. The teacher even made a comment on how messy it looked when he scribbled out his answers. I bet you think this is the end. No, we're only just getting started. This is entitled Mother's Time to Shine. It wasn't that long after the test, maybe a week or so, when me and my parents were called into the school to attend a meeting with the teacher, the entitled kid and the entitled mother. And this is how it went. Teacher says, "The entitled mother has contacted us about this girl bullying this boy. Do you have anything you'd like to say?" "Yes, what exactly did I do?" "You made my baby fail his test." "Could you explain how she managed to do that?" The entitled mother goes on to explain exactly what I did, and the teacher suddenly realized who was really cheating off of who. "So your kid was cheating?" "No, he already knew all of the answers. Anyway, it's just a waste of his time." Yes, the entitled mother actually told the teacher it was a waste of her dumb kid's time, whilst basically admitting that he cheated. But he was copying the answers anyway? She didn't really have much to say after that. The entitled kid was given detention and left in a huff, and I got an apology from the teacher for the detention I was put in. Little details. I'm a 30-year-old white male, brown hair, brown eyes, short beard, and 6 foot. The story. I just sat down next to the window on a flight to New Mexico, the state. That was about a 2-hour flight. I'm generally very laid back and have a go-with-the-flow attitude. Recently, the limit on space seating has ended on coach flights, allowing everyone to sit next to each other when wearing masks on short flights. I have 2 empty seats next to me. Seats are assigned, but generally, attendants can allow the switching of seats if warranted. The entitled mother walks down the aisle with her entitled kid, stops at my aisle, and turns to look at me. I look over as she seems to be sizing me up. I kindly offer the entitled kid the window seat, as it doesn't mean much to me. It could easily mean the world to him. I honestly am not sure if either of them heard me, as her entitled kid instantly out of nowhere started crying in crocodile tears and creating a tantrum about sitting in a window seat. I once again offered my seat and began to stand up. The entitled mother, paying no attention to her entitled kid, began giving me the "I'm a mother" tone and berating me for making her precious kid cry. That I'm a terrible man that needs to learn to respect women and children. Attendant makes her way over to see why the woman is shouting and her kid is crying about. She begins again, mentioning that I disrespected her son and herself and that I should be removed from the plane. I've kept my mouth shut. It's not very much like to make it to my destination. The attendant asks me if it's true what she claims. In short words, I reply with a simple "no ma'am." The attendant then asks me if I'd like to switch seats. I agree, and as we start to walk away, the kid jumps to the window as if he wasn't crying a moment ago. The mom once again demands I be removed from the flight. The attendant looks back and replies, "Ma'am, if you raise your tone to me one more time, it'll be you who is removed from the plane." Pat shut the woman down quickly. The attendant asked me to follow as she led me to a seat in business class. I thanked her and asked how many times she has found herself in this situation. And she said, "Honey, I've been doing this for 20 years. I run into this every other flight. It's best to just switch seats and diffuse the situation rather than let it play out." And she walks off. I got to enjoy my first time in business class next to a window. For a bit of petty revenge at the end of the flight, generally the coach is the last to exit, but I asked the same attendant if I could wait until the coach had passed before exiting the plane. Now the attendant knew exactly what I wanted. I said to take as long as I needed. The entitled mother and her entitled kid started by the aisle. I sat in and I mentioned with a smile that I hope they had a pleasant flight. The entitled mother gives me the biggest frown I've seen and exits the plane. The attendant gives me a bag of nuts as I leave the plane, and I have much more respect for what attendants deal with every day. A bit of context. In a video a few days ago, the entitled mother tried to park in my driveway, then demanded to know if my partner was a bloke. Yeah, it went further. So about 2.5 to 3 hours after that episode, my partner was home and showered, and I had received a Mayday call from my stepfather. He had organized a surprise birthday for my mom and thought he was just the most clever little champ until he realized something. He couldn't find half the people's numbers he wanted to invite. Didn't even think about food, and if he had so much as looked at the vacuum to clean, Mom would have known in a heartbeat. So me to the rescue, and we left to drive up there because she wouldn't blink an eye at me cleaning or organizing food. When we got back 2 days later, there was a notice on a door from police stating they have been around twice to speak to the woman at this address and to please contact them as soon as possible, which I did. Turns out, the entitled mother had called the cops, but because it wasn't an emergency, it took them a few hours to turn up, and we'd left by then. So I called and they organized someone to drop by the next day to speak to me. When they got here, oh wow, this lady went above and beyond to lie about everything. She told them that I came out screaming, threatening her and her child and her car, and probably her non-existent dog too, why not? That I scared her precious kid with animal skulls and had threatened that my partner would beat her up when she got home from work. Honestly guys, I was laughing halfway through. I told him my side and said that if I was going to threaten her with anything, it would be a machete, not a breakable and precious skull. Then a real breakthrough happens. I have well-meaning but back-crazy neighbors on the other side. And Mrs. Bat called over the fence to ask if the cops were here because of that weirdo yelling the other day. I said yes, and she goes, "Oh, do they need to see a video?" Like what? What video? Are there cameras in your house I don't know about? No, actually. She was filming her newly arranged plans on her deck to send to her daughter when a crazy lady went off. So she swung her phone about and recorded us instead. Thank you, Bat Lady. The cops saw everything was exactly as I said it. There were no bones involved, and this entitled mother had issues. She, as far as I know, will be charged with making a false statement, harassment, and wasting police time. She has also been told to stay away from my property and myself, and if she wants to keep going with this, the whole thing was filmed, so knock it off. I'm still laughing and probably will be for the foreseeable future. The neighbors she visited came over to apologize for their friend and gave me a little banana cake, which my partner ate a lot in about 0.2 seconds. Not a bad ending, all up, I'd say. There was a sale today at a warehouse-type store that ends with Co. Brand new kayaks were being sold for super cheap and fully equipped. We arrived a few minutes before opening and the staff pointed us to where we could get a kayak. There were only 18 available and 3 were left. We took one and 15 minutes later, they announced that there were no more kayaks available. Now, some people were disappointed, but no one really made a fuss about it. No one except Karen. She started huffing and stomping her feet in front of the entrance staff, claiming that they shouldn't advertise the kayaks if they don't even have enough for everyone, and that she deserved to have a kayak because they are just so expensive and I have a family to feed. The staff politely explained that they would receive some more over the weeks, and that she could come back at that time. She waved her hand at the staff and made her way back to her car. At that point, me and my mom were loading the kayak on top of the car. My mom went in the store to get some groceries and I stayed in the car as I wasn't feeling well. About 10 minutes later, I hear rattling coming from the side of the car. I took a look and there was the entitled mom with 2 of her crotch goblins trying to undo the straps and take the kayak. I jumped out of the car and said pretty loudly, "May I help you?" Here is a conversation that followed. "Go away! We're just loading our kayak on our car." "Yeah, that's my car. I'm gonna have to ask you to leave or I'm calling the cops." "Can't you see I'm a struggling mom? I just need the kayak to make my kids happy. Look at them. They are so sad not to have one." Her kids were still trying to undo the straps, which they were barely able to reach. "Please take your hands off of the straps, kids. That's my car." "Don't you talk to my kids that way. I'll have you arrested for child molestation. I just want the kayak and then we'll go. Why can't you do a good gesture for us?" "Because it's mine. And you're crazy, lady. I didn't even touch your kids. I'm giving you one last chance to go back to your car or I'm calling the cops." She stood there with her arms crossed and gave me a defiant look. That was all I needed, and I called the cops. They arrived maybe 10 minutes later and the entitled mother had gotten back to trying to untie the straps. I let her do it because I thought the cops would see her and it would be more proof. And gosh, was I right. As soon as they stepped foot outside of their car, they asked the entitled mother to get away from the car, and they wanted to ask her a couple questions. She huffs and tells the police that the kayak is hers and that she paid for it. I show them my receipt and they say it's okay. As they saw her untying the straps, they asked if I wanted to press charges, and I said yeah. At that point, my mom was back and after a brief explanation, we loaded the groceries and drove away. The police stayed with the entitled mom and we could hear her screaming and whining about her kayak being stolen and how she will be doing something about it. Me and my mom just laughed and I'm currently enjoying a relaxing fishing day in my kayak. Some backstory. When I was in middle school, I was 5'7" and only about 95 pounds. Had bad anger issues and horrible friendship skills. This meant that I was a target for bullying. So at gym, Eli, a witch student, and Grace, the bully of the story, were tripping me and throwing things at me. Nothing big, just stuff like eraser caps. I knew that if I did anything back to them, they would go to a teacher and exaggerate what really happened, so I just had to deal with it. This, as always, made me really angry. Fast forward to lunch, my table with all my friends is full, so I decide to sit at the closest table, which isn't more than 3 feet away, and talk to them. The only problem is that Eli and her friends were sitting at the table. It started off fine until Eli threw a piece of corn at me. At this point, I was tired of her, so this is the conversation that happened. "Could you stop?" "If you don't stop talking to us, I'm going to tell a teacher." "For what?" "For throwing food at us." I didn't feel like arguing, so I just went to put my food away. But while I did this, Grace went to a teacher for obvious reasons. I don't know what she said, but it probably went something like this. Mr. Nesson, can you please tell Ethan to stop throwing food at me and to stop harassing me? Mr. Nesson then comes over to my table and asks me if I could talk to him in the hallway. When I'm in the hallway, he says something along the lines of, Ethan, if you don't stop bullying these girls, you're going to get suspended. I'm immediately confused and say that I didn't do anything. Before I'm done speaking, he tells me to cut the nonsense. Keep in mind that I've never actually talked to this person before, and at this point I'm super angry, so I say in my most get-lost voice, what is your problem? Like seriously, I haven't done anything. The jerk teacher attempts to cut me off, so in the most try-me-witch tone I say, shut up when I'm talking to you. This makes him so angry, he grabs my wrist and starts to drag me to the principal's office. He's squeezing my hand so tight that I'm almost screaming in pain. I noticed that a teacher was watching this on the verge of stepping in, so I do what any normal person would do and bit his arm. He immediately lets go and tries to get me off his arm. At this point, the teacher is running over, so I bite harder, and he hits me right in the back of the head. Very hard. I let go and the teacher asks if he's okay. I just recently learned that this teacher is his wife. The teacher screams at me to go to the principal, so I go. Later that day, I got called down to the office. I knew I was in big trouble when I saw my dad. He told me that I was suspended for a week and grounded for a month. This almost made me scream. I kept quiet and just sat through the school telling me what happened. While this was happening, I was thinking about revenge. Since the teacher lived down the road from me, the next day I went to his house at around 3 a.m. with a box of nails, a saw, and a hammer. I knew that he had a very nice BMW, so I wanted to do what I could to the car. I used the hammers to smash his windshield and smash his car windows, but when I did this, his alarm went off, so I was only able to damage the hood and shatter the windows, but this must have been a few $100 to $1,000 worth of damage. A bit of context here. I work as a lawyer for an excellent and famous law firm here in northern Italy. My family went through some tough times. In the last 9 years, we had to face a brutal divorce with my dad having depleted every single cent he could. One of my aunts was brutally murdered because of a €150 cautionary deposit. My granddad was diagnosed with cancer and some other funny stuff in the middle. Because of that, our bonds became stronger and stronger. Must say that with my family. I mean my mother, her parents, and my 2 aunts. This year, COVID-19 managed to take away both my aunts. I loved them to the moon and back, but one of them was married to a complete douchebag. He always considered himself to be better and smarter than anyone else, and so were his relatives. My aunt and her husband, I straight up refused to call him uncle, lived in a huge house, and so did his brother with his wife and son. He died around 7 to 8 years ago and left almost everything he could just to his brother and his family, completely ignoring my family because my granddad is already rich. Why should I leave anything to his daughter and grandson? Basically, this year my aunt was won by COVID. I was grieving, since I really loved her and cared about her, and I already lost another aunt prior. When the notary called us to read the will, both me and my mother came out completely astonished. She left us just a few things, even though she always said that she would have left us basically everything. I don't need the money involved that much, as I already inherited from my other aunt. And my job pays me really well, but my mom always had to struggle, financially speaking. It would have been a huge help, since she doesn't want anything from me. I tried to give her some money in the past, but she always sent them back, being stubborn as she can be. As we walked out, I pulled my cousin by my side to ask him just one thing. Hey cousin, listen, I know it's a dumb question, but when I last saw her, I brought my aunt a little ceramic bell, shaped as a lady. She holded it to her chest all the time. I like to have it back. It will be a memory of her. Him smiling at me as if I was the most stupid person on earth. Yeah, sure, whatever. I don't know what I could do with that stupid bill. Just take it. But don't expect us to give you anything more. We had to sweat bullets for this well to work. Huh? I'm sorry, what do you mean? He realized he screwed up, so he just left. My mom went back home and I headed back to my office to take a closer look at my aunt's well. It was bulletproof, and the handwriting was without any doubt my aunt's. So what the hell did he mean? It took me several weeks to finally get the clue. As previously mentioned by my husband, it was just a small phrase. My aunt's husband died 7 years ago. How the hell could he mention anything? Since zombies are still nowhere to be seen and I don't know of any deceased person talking from his grave, I started to scan the whole well once again. Things I never noticed became as clear as the sun. There were missing pages. My aunt numbered them, but the second and fourth pages were missing, with sentences left hanging there. So the corrections were legit, but looking closely, there were a few of them where the uncertain hand of a 81-year-old lady suddenly became stronger and more precise. My aunt's husband was mentioned every time my aunt was talking about money and valuables. He did say something about savings, but apparently his ties that were to be given to charity didn't need his approval. Strange, huh? When I talked to my mom and her parents about this, my granddad, who is 74 and still has more strength and lucidity than your average 40-year-old dude, mentioned my aunt's husband well. We don't know what he said. His family never let us even take a look at it, and it wasn't worth it to sue them. I went back to the notary the next day, asking to see the well since I was a relative. He let me, but asked what was going on. I simply said, "You'll know soon enough." When I read it, I started laughing so hard that even a secretary came to see what the hell was going on. I rushed back to my office and started to write everything down. Things were about to be messy, but not for my family. After a few days, me, my mom, her parents, and my aunt's relatives met once again in front of the notary. I already told him what was happening. I could see him trying to not look disgusted as my aunt's husband's beloved ones walked in. Notary says, "We are all here. Apparently someone has some things to discuss with us concerning inheritances." You could hear a pin drop a mile away. I stood up and opened my bag. My family was smiling, my relatives were staring daggers from their eyes. As we all know, Auntie left everything to you. Nothing is wrong here. She didn't have any direct relationship with anyone in this room. What is wrong is the reason behind it. I handed a copy of the will to everyone, with some parts being highlighted. As you can see, pages are missing. Some corrections are different, to say the least. But most importantly, my uncle is cited quite often. This led me to his well. At this point, my relatives turned whiter than snow. My cousin tried to stop me, telling me that I couldn't possibly use my uncle's well, as more than 5 years passed. The notary told him that I totally could, as the allowance to contest the will is 10 years. He kept silent. I continued. "He left everything to my aunt he had if she would have left it to you as she died. You see, in our state, it's not legal to make such a kind of contract. So I want to let you know that you just lost all your rights on my uncle's will. You are all to be sued for false declaration and public deed and attempted fraud." They started screeching and screaming, calling me names and wishing me an obviously pleasant and late death. All because one of them wasn't clever enough to shut his mouth. Now they lost everything they had, since their farm, their money, their house, and their cars were all my uncle's. They've been forced to leave the house they were living in. All their bank accounts have been blocked, and even their farm had to be closed since it was also my uncle's previous activity. Since the corrections they made were actually very precise and some items, jewelry, ingots, cash, are now mysteriously missing, they even have to pay for an equal value. They had a little empire but managed to lose everything over greed and stupidity. Ladies and gentlemen, please listen to me. If you want to screw with someone, at least have the courtesy to not doing it with a lawyer. So, I'm a dental assistant for a private practice. Let me just preface this by saying most of our patients are wonderful people. Friendly, happy to see us, respect our professional opinions and recommendations, and so on. But literally just like 3 hours ago, I had the biggest Karen, and for what should have been a simple appointment. So when we do crowns or caps, as some people know them as, we prepare the tooth beforehand and make an impression. Then that impression goes to a lab. The techs there make the crown. It takes 2 to 3 weeks for them to send the crown back. But we deliver the crown to the patient, the doctor and I try the crown in first to see how it fits. It's very rare that it fits perfectly. Almost always have to make some adjustments. Shaving down the crown here and there, checking the space in between the teeth, checking the bite and so on. All of this is standard. The main thing we use is called articulating paper. When the patient bites down on it, we can see heavy blue markings where the bite needs adjusting. The more we adjust, the lighter those marks get, and even stop marking altogether sometimes. Most exchanges with the patient are like this. How's it feel? It's a little high. Okay, we will adjust that. We use the articulating paper, then grind the crown down a little. How's it feel now? Oh, feels much better. Okay, cool, let's cement it in. This takes maybe 5 minutes at most. This lady we had tonight was having none of it. We say, how's it feel? It's way off. Okay, we will adjust it. How's it feel now? The same. Really? No change? The same. Okay, no biggie. Let's adjust more. We did this for maybe 5 minutes over and over and she kept insisting that it was exactly the same. No change. Even though the marks were gone at this point, meaning that her teeth were no longer even touching the crown. At this point, we had a couple options which the doctor presented to her. Doctor says, okay, well, I can keep adjusting the crown, but the only issue is that if I keep reducing the porcelain on top, the metal underneath might end up showing. Are you okay with that? No. Okay, well then, I need to make a small adjustment to the tooth above this one, so that they don't touch. It's very superficial. No, don't touch my other teeth. We do this all the time, ma'am. It doesn't harm the teeth. We're basically just polishing it. No, that's a lie. If you guys did it correctly the first time, you wouldn't have to adjust it at all. Ma'am, we do this for everyone. The lab almost never makes them perfect. We either have to adjust the crown itself or the opposing teeth. I told her, no, you screwed up. Well, we have to adjust one or the other. So which would you prefer? Do you want metal showing? No. So we can polish the opposing tooth? Also no. It'll literally take a few seconds. No, you're lying. It's gonna harm my teeth. At this point, the doctor suggested getting our office manager to talk to Karen. Our office manager is an awesome lady. She's old, doesn't give a crap, and is 2 years away from retirement. I told her the situation and she laughed and said, okay, let's make her wait another month. I don't give a crap. So she marched right in there and said, okay ma'am, since you don't want this crown, we will send it back to the lab and have them redo it. So instead of just waiting the 60 seconds for us to adjust, she now has to wait 3 weeks to come in again. And that's just to re-prepare the tooth. Then she has to wait another 3 weeks for the crown to come back from the lab again. Anyway, thanks for reading. I mostly just wanted to type this out to rant. I've been working as a dental assistant for almost a decade now, and I've never had an exchange like that. It was so bizarre. I straight up think that she was either lying to our faces or just crazy. It made zero sense. Edit. To the people saying that she has every right to request the crown be redone, no. Duh. That's not my issue. My issue is that she accused us of lying, screamed at us, wouldn't tell us why it felt exactly the same, and didn't want any solutions we offered. I've had many patients request that crowns be redone, not a problem. Sometimes the color is off, sometimes the fit is really wrong. They just weren't total Karens about it. You can be polite and still get your way.